History is full of villains and the tales of their dastardly deeds. But just like everyone else, those villains had families and, in some cases, sons and daughters. Sons and daughters themselves. Most of us probably don't think about what happens to the descendants of history's most reviled men. But some of their bloodlines live on, flowing through the veins of their descendants. Some of them went out of their way to distance themselves from the family name. Others made drastic changes in their lives to prevent the bloodline from going on. Many went into hiding, and a few carved out villainous paths of their own. Today, we're exploring what happened to the descendants of some of history's greatest villains. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. Oh, and maybe do us a favor. Leave a comment and let us know what other nefarious historical figures you would like to hear about. Okay, these kids are not all right. During the Second World War, the villainous Hermann Gehring served as president of the Reichstag and was Hitler's second-in-command. Gehring's daughter Etta didn't seem to mind his history of despicable deeds at all. Born in 1938 and raised during the war, she was only 8 years old when Gehring took his own life to avoid facing justice. As an adult, she spoke lovingly of her father throughout her life. In an interview for a 1991 book, Hitler's Children, Sons and Daughters of the Third Reich Leaders, she told journalist Gerald Posner, "I loved him very much, and it was obvious how much he loved me. My only memories of him are such loving ones. I cannot see him any other way." Posner also wrote that she kept a family crest and portraits of her parents on proud display in her apartment for most of her life. In 2015, she tried to retrieve some of the items Gehring looted from Bavaria during the war that were later reclaimed by the country. She petitioned the Bavarian Parliament's Legal Affairs Committee for compensation to return her father's legacy expropriated in the year 1948. Her petition was unanimously rejected by the court within a few minutes. She died in 2018 at the age of 80, never truly condemning her father's horrific misdeeds. Another member of the Gehring family, however, felt quite differently. Unlike his daughter, Gehring's great-niece, Bettina, despised her family name and its legacy. Her mother was loyal to the memory of Hitler and Gehring, but Bettina wanted to distance herself as much as possible from her evil war criminal uncle. So she ran away from home at 13 and never looked back. She decided to cut off the Gehring bloodline with her family. At age 30, she traveled to Mexico and became voluntarily sterilized. She revealed that both she and her brother were voluntarily sterilized to avoid creating a monster. When interviewed for the documentary Hitler's Children, she told him, "I had my tubes tied at the age of 30 because I feared I would create another monster. I look like him for a start. The eyes, the cheekbones, the profile. I look more like him than his own daughter." As of 2016, she lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, practicing herbal medicine and continues to distance herself from the Gehring name. Of the many atrocities committed during the Second World War, none were more horrific than what happened at concentration camps. The deadliest camp, Auschwitz, was responsible for the deaths of over 1 million Jews, 20,000 gypsies, and countless political prisoners. Rudolf Hess built and ran Auschwitz, making him one of the most despicable and deadliest war criminals in recent history. Hess was hanged in Warsaw in 1947 for his crimes. His family, on the other hand, fled to Spain. After marrying an Irish-American engineer, Hess's daughter Brigitta took up residence in Northern Virginia, where she hid her family history for over 40 years. In 1972, she began working at a Washington, D.C. fashion boutique. The Jewish couple who owned the boutique had fled Nazi Germany at the outset of the war. After a night of drinking, she told one of her managers about her family history. Despite learning about her father's evil legacy, the couple kept her on, and she worked there for 35 years. Later in life, she told author Thomas Harding, whose uncle played a key role in capturing her father, about how she remembers him. Although he was responsible for the tragic deaths of so many, she remembers him as the nicest man in the world, telling Harding, "He had to do it. His family was threatened. We were threatened if he didn't, and he was one of many in the SS. There were others as well who would do it if he didn't." As of 2013, Brigitta was battling cancer and living alone in North Carolina. Some dictatorial offspring have complicated feelings about their parents, while others decide to follow in their footsteps. Then there are a select few who lead a normal life, like Sar Pachata, who was the daughter of Cambodian communist dictator Pol Pot. Pol Pot ran the Cambodian Khmer Rouge party until he was sentenced to death for crimes against the revolution. Tsar Pachata ended up going on the run with her father, living without running water or electricity until he took his own life in 1998. After that, she was free to live her life as she pleased. The Khmer Rouge's then ambassador to the UN, Tep Kunal, adopted her. She went to Malaysia to earn a master's degree in English literature and met her fiancé, Saivi Cheka. She married him in 2014 on the site of an old Khmer Rouge stronghold and has lived her life outside the spotlight since. Saddam Hussein's regime was marked by death and terror. Saddam was a brutal dictator and a villain in his own right, but his first son was much worse than he. Uday Hussein was intended to be the heir of Saddam's regime, but lost out after killing his father's personal valet and food taster, Kamel Hana Jeju, during a party in 1988. If that weren't bad enough, Uday's cruelty knew no boundaries. His misdeeds read like a laundry list of atrocities for the modern world. When he chaired the Iraqi Olympic Committee and Iraq Football Association, he regularly subjected athletes to torture and severe punishment. He regularly kidnapped young Iraqi women to assault them, and he reportedly used an Iron Maiden on his enemies. His deadly legacy was brought to an end when a 2003 fight with U.S. forces in Mosul took out both Uday Hussein and his brother Hussein. Speaking of sons of dictators, Muammar Gaddafi spent 4 decades as Libya's dictator. He appointed his son, Mutasam Gaddafi, to a role as Libya's national security advisor. But he had a taste of American music. According to his ex-girlfriend, Talitha Van Zoon, he spent more than $1.6 million a month on his hedonistic pleasures. Over time, stars like Beyoncé and Mariah Carey sang at his parties. The parties themselves boasted quite a few celebrities in attendance, including the likes of Lindsay Lohan and Jay-Z. But his excess in parties came to an end when in 2011, anti-Gaddafi forces, funded by NATO, captured him during the Battle of Sirte. Both he and his father were executed during and after the battle, respectively. Fidel Castro's eldest son, Fidel Angel Castro Diaz-Balart, always supported his father's regime and the Cuban Revolution. Known as Fidelito to friends and family, he spent his early years living in the U.S. following his parents' divorce. When he visited his father in Mexico around the time Castro was preparing to overthrow Havana's Batista dictatorship, Castro decided to keep the boy by his side. Fidelito eventually went to Cuba with Castro. As time passed, he became disillusioned with being involved with the government, disagreeing with Cuba's decisions involving the energy crisis. Fidelito struggled with depression for most of his life. After his father died in 2016, he fell into major depression and took his own life in January of 2018. As a communist revolutionary in China, Mao Zedong was responsible for creating the People's Republic of China. His policies ushered in disastrous campaigns like the Great Leap Forward. Intended to mobilize labor to improve agricultural and industrial production, it instead led to millions of deaths due to famine. His cultural revolution did tremendous damage to China's cultural heritage and resulted in over 1 million deaths in many cities on the verge of anarchy. Mao Zedong's daughter, Li Na, was born in 1940, excelled in her studies at Peking University, and graduated with a history degree in 1965. She later worked at the People's Liberation Army Daily, the official newspaper for the People's Republic of China. By 2007, she was living in a modest apartment complex in Beijing. Over the next few years, she attended several ceremonies commemorating her father. Speaking of the daughters of communist leaders, Joseph Stalin had several children, but only one daughter. Her name was Svetlana Alliluyeva, but she later changed it to Lana Peters. At the age of 6, she lost her mother to suicide, leaving her to be raised by her brothers and father. But many family members died unexpectedly. Her brother Jacob died in a Nazi concentration camp after Stalin refused to do a prisoner exchange. Another brother succumbed to alcoholism at the age of 40. Peters eventually defected from the Soviet Union in 1967. She became a naturalized citizen of the U.S. 11 years later. While she had a brief stint where she returned to the USSR for a few years in the 80s, she returned to the United States, living out her final years in Wisconsin. She went on to write and publish 4 books, 2 of which were best-selling memoirs. She also had 3 marriages and 3 children throughout her life. Peters passed from cancer at the age of 85 in 2011, an accomplished American citizen. Italian dictator Benito Mussolini's oldest daughter, Etta, didn't get along with her father. She married a fascist propagandist named Galeazzo Ciano, who was executed for treason in 1944. Why was he executed? Because he had the audacity to vote against Mussolini in an attempt to oust him from office. Following Ciano's death, Etta escaped to Switzerland, where she smuggled out diaries containing the regime's secret history. Upon her 1945 return to Italy, authorities arrested and sentenced her to serve 2 years in prison. Following her father's execution, she famously had an affair with a Chinese warlord and political figure, Chiang Kai-liang. She's been the subject of several films and may have inspired Hermann Gehring to name his own daughter after her. In 1975, Etta Mussolini Ciano published her autobiography, La Mia Vita, which was translated and published as My Life in 1975. She died 2 decades later while living in Rome. In another instance, where a son steps into his father's shoes and dials things up to 11, Jean-Claude Baby Doc Duvalier picked up right where his father left off. François Papa Doc Duvalier wreaked havoc on Haiti during his stint as the country's president from 1957 to 1971. His policies and actions led to the deaths of over 60,000 Haitians and the exile of many others. Baby Doc continued treating Haitians in the same manner, leading to thousands of additional victims. He lived in luxury, while his people dealt with abject poverty. But Baby Doc didn't just leave it at that. He also had his hand in drug trafficking and, black market body parts. His reign of terror lasted from 1971 to 1986, when the public finally overthrew him, and he fled to France. He returned to Haiti in 2011 and was promptly arrested for suspected embezzlement. 2 years later, he faced charges of corruption and human rights abuses, for which he pleaded not guilty. A heart attack struck Duvalier dead in 2014, bringing the deadly legacy of father and son to an end. So what do you think? Who was the worst of the bunch? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.